Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in on this installment of Sowing Seeds. Where our discussion today is going to be pursuing your passions outside of medicine. First, to introduce our panelists, first we have Dr. Oyetewa Asempa. She is an assistant professor of dermatology at the Baylor College of Medicine and director of the Skin of Color Clinic for Baylor's Department of Dermatology. She was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and then went on to graduate summa cum laude from Howard University in Washington, D.C. She completed her medical degree at the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine, during which she also completed a year of research at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. She completed her internship at the George Washington University and then her residency training at the Harvard Dermatology Program, where she served as the chief resident in her final year. She specializes in hair loss and scalp disorders. Outside of medicine, she enjoys writing short stories as well as writing and performing spoken word poetry. Secondly, we have Dr. Colbert Nelson. He is a current assistant professor in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine, as well as sports medicine at the University of Oklahoma Health Science Center and OU Health. He is from Little Rock, Arkansas, went to the medical school at William Carey University College of Osteopathic Medicine, and is an alumni of both the University of Missouri Family and Community Medicine Residency and Sports Medicine Fellowship. His interests include sports medicine, exercise and nutrition, ultrasound, education and mentorship, ambulatory and patient medicine. Currently, he is involved with sports coverage of various levels, teaching medical learners, growing his own skills in clinic and mentorship. In his spare time, he likes to relax with his wife, Raven, and their two children and dog, Bishop. First, I want to thank both of you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedules for speaking with us and really sharing your wisdom and advice. To start us off, I want to ask, how do you define passion outside of medicine, and what does that look like in your own life?
Okay. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that is a broad, category of all the things that I'm passionate about besides being a physician. Personally, like was mentioned, I'm a spoken word poet, so I really love poetry, performing poetry. And, it's funny, I'm sure we'll get to this, but this is a season where I have not been as true to my passion in terms of being able to perform and be out there. This is one of those seasons where I have been lacking in that. But when I'm on my A game, I love to perform as much as I can, to write as much poetry as I can, to go to as many open mics as I can, and be surrounded by art in that way. I also love to write short stories. And then more recently, over the last 5 years or so, I've gotten pretty consistent with social media. It still is kind of medicine adjacent because my social media is focused on educating patients about the things that I do. But it does get to kind of expand, and I get to show more of my personality and hopefully connect to patients who may or may not get to see me in medicine. So I'd say the two big things that are passions outside of medicine for me really are poetry and social media engagement.
Um, Also, in a season of life where it's harder for me to really pursue my passions to the fullest extent that I wish I could. But yeah, pretty broad. I mean, I like to stay as physically fit as I can, read, and honestly play video games. That's when I try to get away from everybody, including the kids who are looking for me right now. So fingers crossed they don't find me. Um, I'm not on social media really. I definitely don't have uh the passion or the outgoingness to do open mic nights and talk poetry. I just like to, stay in my little bubble after I do all that extroverted stuff during the day at work. So that's me.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you both for that for those wonderful introductions. To kind of lead off from that, I want to ask, when did you realize that you wanted or needed something outside of medicine to feel fulfilled? And was that during your training or later on, or if you can elaborate more on that?
I mean, I can start. I can say, for me, I'm a poet first. If someone had to ask me that I had to give up
Mhm.
something permanently, which one would I give up? It would definitely be medicine. No shade. But that's just, I've been writing since I was 3 years old, and that's something that, performing. It's funny because the writing is a little bit stressful for me. I write
Mhm,
because I need to write in order to perform, but the
mhm,
performing and being able to connect to people and people hearing my words and feeling something for themselves, that is, indescribable. And I think that medicine is also a passion of mine, especially like how I'm doing it now, focusing on patients of color, focusing on hair loss, which I hated in residency, but it just ended up in my
mhm.
lap as an attending. um, and really getting to pour into communities that feel overlooked, but definitely it's not enough because it pulls so much away from you. So I feel like the passions outside of medicine, you realize those are the things that push into you, pull into you, put into you. And so again, like when we both talk about being in a space when there's not as much time or energy to do those things, it can be draining because at work you're being drained all day, right? Like you're not really getting fed at all at work, at least not me. Um, and so then if you're working back to back to back and then not getting fed, and then of course all of us have life outside of work where we're also helping to serve other people, it could definitely be, you can look up and just realize that you're on zero. So I think that's why the passion is so important, and reminding myself even in this conversation the importance of, like, the same way that we, shepherd and shield time for work and for medicine, we have to kind of shepherd and shield the time that we need for the things that give us joy. Even for me, travel is another thing. I'm really big into travel. I love seeing new places, but money is important as well, and time is important. So yeah, it's so important just to pour back into yourself so that you have something to give.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out as I've gone through my career so far. I guess I've done some form of exercise consistently since high school. It's a big stress reliever for me. I just like to, go to the gym and put on my music and just kind of do my thing. It helped me get through medical school and residency and fellowship. A little bit harder to consistently do it with a job and the family life and all that other kind of stuff pulling at you, but that's been a pretty big thing that I notice. When I miss it, I feel terrible, and when I get it in consistently, I feel amazing. um, More recently, it's reading has been something I've been trying to get into, reading for pleasure, not for knowledge related to my job at least. So that's been really nice to just, read a book because I want to read it, not read a book because I need to figure out what I don't know about this or that or study for a test. So, um, yeah, a little bit of stuff that's been there probably the whole time, but also kind of finding things that just give me joy and kind of put more fuel in me because we spend a lot of energy kind of doing everything else.
Absolutely. So following up with that, during like residency or fellowship, like during your training, when time was limited, how did you go about protecting that part of yourself, or protecting that space for yourself, I should say?
I mean, I can say I definitely didn't do a good job of protecting that space for myself during training. So I know this is all sounding very depressing and disappointing, but I'm not going to even try to lie and flex like I did. This is something that someone told me, particularly for the women. I don't know how many people are on here, but you can have everything you want in life, just not at the same time. I think that's so true because there have been times and seasons in my life where I'm getting booked for gigs. I'm traveling to perform. My name is on flyers and I'm super excited. And then there are times where I'm in the books and I'm studying and I'm fighting for medicine and I can't remember the last time I performed. And that's just the truth. And I have definitely never been able to find a perfect balance of where it's like I'm performing twice a month and I'm also in clinic and everything's great. My notes are signed and I feel great and I'm eating well, I'm working out. That's just never happened consistently in my life. I think in order to be excellent at anything, it does take it does take you out of balance. I don't think that you can do well on like step, for example, and have been in perfect balance the entire time. Like it requires a season of being outside of balance in order for you to succeed at a high level on that exam. Same thing for on your clinical rotations. It does probably require you to be out of balance with your familial relationships, or maybe with TV, if that's important to you, reading your books. You're probably going to have to be a little bit out of balance on surgery rotation. You're not going to be fully balanced and also trying to kill it on a surgery rotation, right? So I think giving up that expectation that I'm going to be killing it in every aspect of my life at all times, and just saying which one is most important to me in this season, but then checking in to check in again and remind yourself, like, am I putting energy into the thing that is truly most important in this season, right? So Dr. Nelson has kids. I don't have kids yet, right? So even the things that I'm doing now, I'm sure that is going to change drastically, because then poetry probably isn't the thing that I'm focused on the most. I'm like, okay, I got to make sure my kids are good. I got to make sure I'm reading to them, right? So I feel like all of those things, whatever the biggest priority is at that season. So I definitely was not great at carving out time as a trainee at all. I think it was really just like, it was cycles of trying to do okay, burnout. That means now I really got to do something I love, and then back to work. So that was kind of how I did it. Now, one thing I will say is I did take 1 day in 7 that I didn't study all through med school and all through residency. And that was helpful to keep me sane in terms of connecting to family and loved ones. It wasn't necessarily helpful in terms of poetry or social media at the time, but definitely helpful in terms of connecting to my loved ones. So that was something that I did to carve out space for family.
I would basically echo everything that was said. There's definitely ebbs and flows. I wish I could work out consistently, X number of days a week, X number of hours, and my diet looks like this, but that's not the case. Between medical school and residency and fellowship and even attending life, like it's not perfect. I have my days and weeks where, it's the last thing on my mind in terms of ability I can like fit into my schedule. But if I focus in on it, it's going to bring me down even more. I've tried to prioritize time. So in medical school, the schedule is a little bit more consistent depending on what year you're in. So it makes it a little bit easier to carve out that time versus, residency, especially if you're doing all the different things you can do, it can just get lost. I don't know if there's a consistent way to do it. You just have to try to not forget to take care of yourself, because yeah, it's a journey.
And I will say, I'll just put this out there now as an attending. One thing that I've learned as a potential practical tip is just, again, I said it before, but just like putting times on your calendar for the things that are important to you. Because we put things on our calendar as a block for work or for school, and then we honor that. But for some reason, the things that are for ourselves or for our family are movable. It's like in pencil as opposed to in pen. But you actually do have the choice to say, like, I'm going to practice poetry, for me, for example, and I'm going to put a 2-hour block on Saturday evening or Sunday morning. I could choose to honor that. But for some reason, we do tend to honor work and then not honor ourselves in the same way. So, that is a choice. And it's something that I know some of my friends in med school were better at doing than I was. I know some people who somehow did work out, every day and stuff. That was not me. So it's possible, but it is definitely difficult, and it definitely takes a deliberate effort and a choice.
Absolutely. Thank you both for elaborating on that topic. Um, I guess kind of like a little bit of a segue, how has pursuing your passions influenced the way you show up for your patients or your trainees, or I guess in a different light, or how you approach your clinical practice?
I'll jump at this one first. I mean, being a family med, sports med physician, it does make it pretty easy to be able to talk about wellness when I'm actually taking care of myself. Been able to offer personal advice related to the things you could do either by yourself or with young kids or with your partner, yada, yada, yada. Those real world life experiences are pretty helpful in just connecting with people. Um, it's just hard to sometimes, sometimes you gotta, I would say maybe like talk it up a little bit more than maybe your actual involvement at the time. talking to my patients about things related to diet and exercise. And I know last night I went and got like $30 at Taco Bell because you just got to do it sometimes. I might leave that piece out, but just finding really those small things to connect and um, hopefully speak more of that positivity on how it's been beneficial to you. It's been helpful for me.
And $30 on Taco Bell is diabolical, actually.
I don't even feel bad, so I don't feel.
Um, yeah, for me, I think I'll speak to the social media piece. So when I started the Skin of Color Clinic at Baylor, social media was a huge way to actually pull patients in because we really weren't seeing a lot of patients of color at Baylor's Department of Dermatology, even though we're in Houston, Texas, right? So really the term Skin of Color Clinic is nothing different. It's my regular clinic, right? People come in like, which one's the Skin of Color Clinic? I'm like, it's just me, right? But it's just a shingle so that people know that there's someone here looking out for them, shingle on the door. So social media really ended up being synergistic in that that was the first way that I pulled patients in. And then media also, because social media is something that I'm passionate about, but in general media, right? So I like to talk clearly. Okay. So anything that has to do with, TV or radio or whatever, I was doing a lot of that when I first came out here to try to recruit patients to the clinic. So it directly impacted my clinical practice in terms of literally that's how I got a lot of my patients, and we're booked out 10 months now and stuff just because of social media. And in fact, it's so much of a blessing that it's a curse because now patients see you online and they want to get in immediately. They can't. But then on top of that, when they come, they want to talk to you for a long time because they feel like they're bestie. And you want to be on your best behavior all the time. I'm obviously always on my best behavior, but you don't want to have a personality that is like, wait, I thought that you were like fun and bubbly and like, why are you trying to rush me out of the room? So I feel like it's a blessing and a curse because my patients definitely have expectations based on the explanations that I'm able to give about disease state on social media that I'm not always able to take that time in clinic. So it is helpful though to be able to direct my patients back to my social media for detailed explanations on things that I may not have the same amount of time to be able to give them in clinic if it's a rush. So that's been helpful as well, directing them to social media for like resources. And so that's why I kind of keep my public facing social media focused on like what I specialize in, because that way the information that patients are seeing online hopefully is corroborated with like what I'm telling them in clinic as well.
Okay. So for the next, my next question, kind of the similar vein, how do you balance your personal passions with the added responsibility many of us feel to serve, mentor, and uplift our communities?
I mean, okay, go ahead.
I didn't have a good. I didn't have a good answer. So if you want to try it first, like please, that's a tough one.
So I mean, I'll speak probably from the aspect of like med students mentorship. Um, Similarly, with clinic, when you're on social media a lot, then you get a lot of med students reaching out to you for mentorship, and that's been hard because I know that uh, people who were advisors and sponsors and mentors to me as a medical student, that was key. That was so important. So in theory, I would love to give that kind of energy to every med student that I come across. It's just not practical. And it's funny because I used to wonder why I got ignored so many times when I sent out cold emails as a med student to faculty and people didn't respond back, or I started a research project and never heard back from this mentor. Now that I'm a faculty, I'm like, I get it because it's a lot, right? And as a student, you're like, this is your whole world. But as the faculty, they have 50 students that are trying to do projects and do all this kind of stuff. So that's been tough. So one of the things that was helpful to me is again the calendar thing. So I have a Calendly that I put a link. There's a link, and the time that I have for mentorship is on that calendar. And if it's full, it's full. So when students reach out to me, I'm like, here's my link. Oh, it's full. So sorry, check back when there's added dates, right? And that boundary has been very helpful. But it also allows me in those times that students are in my, I call it office hours, right? I have my office hours for student mentorship. I can give you my all in that 30 minutes. Not before, not after, right? Students email me CVs, I can't look at it. In the 30 minutes, I can look at it though, right? Personal statement, I can't look at it beforehand, but I will look at it in this 30-minute block. When the time is up, I got another student and then I'm done for the day in terms of that. And that has been very helpful to keep me true to being able to give some time. Because I feel like if I didn't have that, I would just be like, I can't take mentees. That's probably what I would say. But having that has allowed me to have boundaries. And it's frustrating because I think a lot of times people want more and even need more of you. Um, but it's tough, and it's kind of funny because I remember 100% being on the other side of this exchange and really wanting more. And then there were some mentors that had more time and more energy, and so yeah, I think that's kind of what I would have to say about that.
Yeah, I got to step my game up when it comes to being organized. Yeah, I don't have a good system like you. I just I'm kind of a whatever happens, kind of guy. I'm in a new kind of area, new city, didn't train here at all. So a lot of it is just kind of, I'm not on social media really, at least actively. I don't really commercial like market myself a whole lot. So the people who I do get, I do have a little bit more time and availability for, whether it's people here or people back where I trained. Um, but I I just don't have the added stress and attention of being, on social media and active. So I think that's been helpful for me. Besides that, I just, I try to give honest feedback like how I wish I had, or those times where I did get it from mentors. Don't just be nice to me, or don't just try to pat me on the back. Like, tell me what I need to do better. Tell me what I can work on. Tell me what parts of myself that I need to really grow to get to where I want to be. I'm not going to have all the answers, but try to have the best answers I can, or connect you to somebody who does. That's been the one thing I have been trying to do when I do get mentors. But yeah, definitely not as busy as some other people for sure.
Because thank you so much for both of those providing your insight there. So another question I wanted to ask, like a common theme that a lot of students here in medicine is like delayed gratification. So I wanted to ask for students who feel that they need to delay gratification until like after their training, would you say that's realistic, or would you look at it more as a trap of some sort?
I'd say it's both, right? It's both and, because there are some things that if you constantly say, so I'll give a again the same example I've been giving with poetry. And as a med student, I was like, in residency, I'm gonna have time. As a resident, I was like, oh, once I get to faculty, I'll definitely be able to make time. Here I am, still not making time, right? So I do think that if I had gained the skills to again block out time to be consistent about art as a med student, I probably would be doing more art now. So I think that's a fact. So I definitely think that it's something that I'm deliberately trying to see, like, okay, how can we finally make this happen? But then I do think it's also the other thing too. Remember, it's also expecting what I said earlier, like you may not be able to do all the things and be excellent at them at the same time. So if being excellent is important to you as a med student, it probably means you are delaying some in fact, if you aren't delaying some gratification, you're probably not a good med student. Unfortunately, it's just kind of hard, right? It's kind of rough to make it through. But I think one example that I'll give as well is, I think I mentioned I really love to travel. In residency, where was I going? First of all, what schedule? How? I'm on call. Like there was no way, right? But I saved up my little coins. Actually, was an RA in residency, so I lived in the dorm for free. I ate at the cafeteria for free, so I didn't have to buy groceries. I didn't have to pay rent. So I saved money through residency. It was definitely ghetto, and it was also COVID time. So I was in charge of confiscating cocaine from the undergrads. Okay, that's what was going on. So, but the benefit of that is all that money. I actually took a year off after residency before starting as a faculty, and during that time off, I traveled. I was staying in hostels, solo travel, in Europe and West Africa and in parts of Asia. And I did get to perform and do stuff like that. Again, it was very budget travel because saving money as a resident, that's not real money. So many people wouldn't stay in a hostel. But for me, I was like, I want to be out, and I know I want to be out for a year. And this is how I can make this money last. And so it was maybe the best year of my life, just an amazing time. So that was what I would consider delayed gratification. I didn't travel, I didn't do anything during residency, had that lump sum. And then when I was actually fully free, I did get to do that and then come back and start working. So I haven't had any time as free as that since I started working. But I'm so grateful that I, again, was able to delay gratification, save my money, kind of sacrifice a little bit, not have my own space, have students knocking on my door, so that I did have that time for a year that I could really dedicate to what I cared about doing.
I'll kind of take a different perspective. So for me, I think, delayed gratification is a big part of just the medical educational experience at this point in time. Hopefully, things change in whatever way they can to be more optimized and positive. But if you're trying to be a physician, like, you're gonna have to put some things off that friends and family don't understand why, and friends and family are doing while you're not. Um, I didn't really realize it a lot of times as I was going through it, but with that delayed gratification, do your best to open your ears and your heart to your support system. They're not going to fully understand what you're going through or why you're going through it, but you tell somebody, like, you did well on this test, or uh, your preceptor on X rotation thought you did a good job today, or you were getting pimped questions about some type of anatomy and you thought you did really well, and they're gonna be screaming your name and cheering for you, and you might not think that's a big deal, and it might not be in the big scheme of things, but please take that positivity and, like, file it and keep that in mind. Because if you don't have that, you're just going to be waiting years and years for that kind of check mark. When you start medical school, you got only thing to look forward to are tests that basically decides your future. And then you get to third year, and it's a lot of stress because you got to impress people. Then fourth year, you got to impress people to get the job that you hope you can get and that you want to. It's a lot of stress. Like, just try to focus on those small wins that you might not see or realize, but hopefully your support system does and can cheer for you and hold you up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very confident that not only myself but a lot of our viewers can really take away a lot from that, from both of your responses to that question in particular. So to follow up with that, I want to ask, how do you recognize when medicine is taking up too much of your emotional bandwidth?
I can hit this one first. Man, I'll go back to residency. I didn't recognize it took up my bandwidth until I was burnt crispy. Um, Skipping the details, I woke up one day and I didn't want to keep going, uh, and that's when I noticed it. Um, Luckily, like, there were the things in place to be able to, reach out and get the help that I needed to try to get more kind of stable and get back into the groove. And obviously, feel like I'm doing okay and productive in terms of my job and my outreach and stuff like that. Sometimes you won't know until you hit that wall, and that's kind of my view on it. Majority of us, I imagine, in some way, shape, or form, are very used to being successful and high achieving and thriving in high pressure situations when there's a lot of pressure on you to perform. Um, and a lot of people can do that, but, not everyone can go all the time. There's going to be a point where you hit a wall. I don't have the best insight because, like I said, I got surprised by it. I thought I was big time, just going along, doing my thing, and then it hit me. Hopefully, for me, I would say you have that support system, which I think is huge, and that insight to be hopefully humble enough to recognize when you are kind of down, like, hey, this is where I am. I need help. A lot of us just try to be strong and get through it, especially if you don't have a lot of um, supporters or allies, depending on our setup and where we go to school. But, you know, if and when you do hit that point, try to take a second, recognize that your hard work is your hard work, but you need a break just like everybody else. You need time to step back, go get some Taco Bell, don't feel bad, pick yourself up and keep going. So, now there's definitely times where I'll miss a day. If we're talking about just the passions, I'll miss a day of exercise, and I'll feel a little bad, a little down, but I mean, I can make up for it later in the day. I can make up for it tomorrow, or I can just, big scheme of things with one day out of like a year, a month, a week. So, um, just recognizing like it's okay to be human. You're gonna have your faults and your shortcomings. Just roll with the punches and don't beat yourself up too much.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think similarly, you know when you hit rock bottom. That's basically how I feel. I mean, in med school, I knew when I started having panic attacks, and I didn't even know what that was. I thought I was dying, literally. And actually, it's funny because I took that year off, and now looking back on my life, it seems like I took, and I mean in medical school for research year, like at the NIH, it looks like I did that because I knew I was going to be a dermatologist, and that's not actually true. I did that because I wanted to be an OB-GYN at the time. I wanted to do all the things. I got into med school. I wanted to be peds, and then I switched to ortho. Like seriously, I got nth dimensions ortho, right? Like I was for real going to be ortho. Then I switched to OB-GYN. Then I did my third year, did my OB-GYN rotation, and they hated me and I hated them. Okay, so I honored every rotation except OB-GYN, the one that I cared the most about. They didn't like me and I didn't like them. Not gonna lie. And after that rotation, I was very depressed because I was like, oh, I thought this is what I was trying to do. And so the NIH MRSP program was the one research program that allowed you to pick get the research year without picking a lab. And that's why I ended up there. And it was during my research year that I ended up deciding that I wanted to do dermatology because I had two PIs. One was a pulmonologist, one was a dermatologist, and that ended up working out beautifully. So it looks as though I was crafting my path and taking a research year to be a dermatologist. In reality, I was burnt out and felt at the time like if I maybe I wasn't meant to be a doctor because like how am I not liking so many things? Like I'd done so many rotations, I didn't like any of it, right? I even did a 2-week derm rotation in med school, didn't like it, thought it was very boring, right? So at the time, I was like, I probably shouldn't be here. And so yeah, taking that year off was exactly what I needed because even though it was a research year, which I know can be very stressful for a lot of people, mine was really fun. It was residential. It was 30 of us living in the cloister in Bethesda, acting like a fool, and also learning a ton. And so I that was what I needed to reset. And even me taking that year off after residency was what I needed to reset because residency was really difficult for me, and so I knew I needed time. And so when I got my job, I was like, I'm applying for jobs now, and I'm only taking a job if they're letting me take a year off after I get the job because I want to know that I'm coming home to a job. I don't want to come home and look for a job. So that was a requirement for me. So for me, I've always been same thing. I took a year off after undergrad, right? So I have never been afraid to take time off of what I'm doing. I took a sabbatical last year. Okay, I took time off as a faculty. I didn't get paid, but I was not working. Okay, so I think for me, whenever I start feeling like if I go another day, I will die, that's when I stop. And I feel proud of myself for that because I'm a Nigerian child of immigrants. My parents don't like the idea of me taking time off. Every single time I took a year off, they were like, "Oh, you're not gonna after undergrad. Oh, she's not gonna go to med school." And then during med school, Tyler, year off. She's not gonna graduate. I mean, every single time they thought I wasn't gonna go back. And I mean, and if I didn't, and so, but anyway, I did, and it gave me the energy to keep going. So never feel like you have to push past your breaking point. If you're broken, what you're not going to help your patients, you're not going to help yourself, right? So um, I think that's it for me. And I think ideally, I would not have to reach rock bottom to take that time off, right? Ideally, you'd recognize when you're about to get there and then take the time off. But not all of us have that much insight. Um, but yeah, that's what I'd say for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for both of you for your vulnerability with that question. Once again, it was a lot of insight and a lot to unpack there. Um, so I guess following up with that, if a student told you I want to have a big life outside of medicine, what specialty factors should they consider, or what advice would you share with them regarding that question?
So you said a type of big life?
Oh, like maybe like a big like have a life outside of medicine, essentially.
I mean, what I would say and have said is what's important to you. Um, is it traveling? Is it having a family? Is it being there for every like game or activity that your children are doing? Is it being present with your parents as they grow older, being able to get time to go to whatever little family things? If you have a bunch of cousins and the city, are y'all doing like a cousins brunch thing every week? What are your goals? And then being having a realistic look at what is reasonable and not reasonable. I don't factor in residency necessarily as a part of that. Like residency is residency. It's going to be not great for a lot of reasons, but that's just one season of life. Um, and then you have your career after that. But I would say if your personal goals will match up with what's doable in your career goals, or you don't know anyone who's doing that career who has the lifestyle that you want, I mean, that's a pretty easy sign for me. And that's what I would kind of tell people. But I'm also someone who never wanted to do surgery. So I started off kind of taking out a bunch of stuff.
And it's funny because I'm the kind of person who I picked a specialty like dermatology, and you would think I have free time, but the way that I picked it and the way that I've been operating in it makes no sense. Like when people find out that I'm still in clinic at 7 p.m., they're like, "Aren't you a dermatologist? Like, what's happening?" Or that I take call or that I'm on consults and stuff, So it also depends not just on the specialty, but how you decide to do that specialty. Academics is a little bit rough. Some of y'all might need to think about private practice anyway. But yeah, so I think definitely, of course, any specialty where your focus is more shift work or your focus is more outpatient medicine, as opposed to really long operations and things like that, that's going to lend itself towards potentially having time after work. But it really matters so much more like where you work and what you decide to craft for your career. um so I think that's what ends up ultimately determining what you do every day. Because I definitely think I get made fun of by a ton of my friends that are in other specialties for choosing a lifestyle uh, specialty, but they don't work as much as I do. So I'll just put that out there. So it's definitely your choice how much you work, or how much you don't work. But it has to what has you have to know yourself and know what's important to you. Just like it was said, if it's really important to you to be there for family at certain things, like you can't necessarily be in a specialty where you're going to be working 24-hour shifts in your real like big person job, right? um, or at least that can't be all the time, because maybe you can do those kinds of shifts as an emergency medicine physician, but you're doing those shifts like, I have a friend, he has 8 shifts a month. So his shifts are crazy, but then he's off for 3 weeks. So medicine is super diverse. Every single specialty has a different way that you can do it. So you just want to think about that. And then also having the bravery or the courage to ask for what you want, even, in your job and in your space. Because people will tell you, oh, it hasn't been done, but it can be done, right? Like I remember even me talking to my attendings as a resident about the idea that I wanted to take a year off before, but to get my job before I left. They were like, no one's going to do that. That's not how that works. Like you can go and then come back. And I was like, no, I don't want to go and come back and look for a job. Otherwise my time off is not going to be restful if I think I don't have a job when I get back. And I was able to do it. So, but if I had listened to people that told me it was impossible, then I wouldn't have been able to craft that out for myself. So similarly, I know people who they're part-time. They work, a few half days a month, and they may get paid less, but they may have the freedom that they want. Or some people who, even with me, social media has been it's a buffer, because I mean I get paid, to be clear. Okay, I get paid for social media. So that also could allow me to decide if I want to have less clinic and do. Okay, so I think those are things that can also help to kind of craft the life that you want. So just don't let people tell you what you can and cannot do, even in the specialty that you choose. So even if you decide to be a neurosurgeon, right? You know, but if you decide to be a neurosurgeon, you still can decide how many surgeries you want to do. You still can decide where you want to work and what kind of schedule you want to have. And the ones get the surgeries may be long, but you may not do as many as your colleagues, and that's okay.
Okay. So as we wind down my last few questions, So for like the students who feel like they have like lost themselves in the grind of preclinical years or their rotations, what advice or what would you tell them?
I mean, I could say this. I think it does depend on what you're trying to accomplish. That's what I'm going to say. If your goal is to graduate, and let me take it back. No matter what, take care of your health, your mental health. Okay, so I'm not talking about if your mental health's on the brink. If your mental is on the brink and you're having panic attacks like I was, take care of yourself, period, point blank. Okay, so let's assume that you feel like you've lost yourself because you're grinding, but you're mentally stable. Okay, so assuming you're mentally stable, you have to think about what your goal is. If your goal is, I want to pick which residency program I walk into, you may have to keep grinding and understand that med school is a time frame and you're going to grind a little bit harder for this point, right? I often tell my mentees, what is your breaking point? Go to it and stop. Don't pass it, but you may need to like get next to it to accomplish what you think for the goals that you set for yourself. Other people, and you could, don't raise your hand, not that I can see it, but other people are like, I just want to match anywhere in any specialty. I don't care. I don't, that makes a little bit of a difference, right? And we don't like to talk about that. You know, being in dermatology, I can say confidently that there are some students who hustled to get there and it showed, and it's easier for them to match. And then there are some who coasted, had a really good life. We see it on social, right? And then struggle when it comes to matching. So I think it really does depend entirely on what's important to you, what your goals are, what specialty you want to go into, and what program you want to go into, even within that specialty, because there are some programs that may be harder for you to connect with than others, depending on your CV. So again, I think the first important thing is knowing where your physical and mental health is, because that's most important. Nothing works if your brain doesn't work. But beyond that, knowing where your limit is and just going right there, right? I think that is what I recommend. If you're at your limit, then you stop. And that's another thing. A lot of times, and this is one of the things that grinds my gears with mentees sometimes, they will be past their capacity and then still ask for another research project. That is a huge red flag, because then you're dropping balls for attendings. They don't forget that, right? I'm not going to forget if I had a deadline and a student didn't get the stuff to me by the deadline, but it's because they're doing a project for someone else, because then you shouldn't have asked me to work with me, right? It would be better for you not to have met that attending or work with them than for you to work with them and slow them, be the limiting factor on that project. So just take less projects and then do excellently on those. You're going to get a better letter from that than being the person with 40 projects, but each of those faculty knows how hard it was to get you to do something, right? So being self-aware enough to know your limits is so important, so you can come to it but never above it. Never ever ever extend yourself beyond your limit as a med student, because it shows. And then it ends up backfiring because you're working so hard, you're killing yourself, and then your grades don't even, especially third year, when people are grading you based on their subjective opinion of you, your grades may not reflect how stressed you were. That's how it was for me on OB-GYN. I was killing myself on OB-GYN. Okay, I was hustling, trying to hold up uteruses, reading books, all this kind of stuff, PubMed every night, knowing everything, being in everybody's face. I didn't know how not to be annoying as a med student at the time. Okay, being up in everybody's face, trying to do all the things, and I didn't even get, that was my worst grade. That was my worst grade as a third year, right? So I think that's what my advice would be. Understand what your goals are, get to your limit, but never above, and then just know that it's just for a season.
I would just add maybe a few small things. Number one, like don't be afraid to take a second and think like, the why am I doing this? And if you can't answer the why, like back off, say no, readjust. Like no one's gonna. I mean, of course, unless you bite off some crazy amount and you're like, uh, some president of some club and doing this and doing that. But for the most part, like if you feel like you're overwhelmed, like take a second, pause, recenter yourself, and go from there. Um, that's I wish some advice I listened to when I first got done with training and became an attending. Like it's okay to say no. It's okay to like advocate for yourself. It's okay to readjust your plans. I mean, if you wanted to do one specialty, you get there, you don't like it, that's okay. There's something else out there for you. If you're trying to get XY certification on top of something else. I used to be interested in getting some strength and conditioning credentials on top of everything else. And I just didn't have the time or the energy or the motivation. And like, that's okay. My career is probably in the same place that it would be, if not better in some ways, because I chose to not do that and kill myself. Just, it's okay to say no. It's okay. As someone who did not get that for a long time, it is okay.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. For pretty much my last question, I wanted to open up to both of you if you had any lasting piece of advice or anything you'd like to share with our viewers tonight, and for those that are listening.
I'll just say I do think, like I said earlier, like self-awareness is so important. Knowing what truly is important to you, like being aware of what you truly do care about so that you don't lose it. Because even this conversation has reminded me, has put it back in the forefront of my mind what I do care about, and making a more concerted effort even today to be like, okay, let me recenter and figure out how I can spend more time doing what I care about. Because I think, especially in academics and in medicine in general, but definitely in academics, it can lend itself to doing a million silly things that don't matter. Being on committees, what are we even trying to accomplish on this committee? You know what I'm saying? Like, that just don't matter. And then they take up so much of your time. Each little thing feels like it's not that big of a deal, but then collectively it takes up so much of your time. And you're saying you don't have time to do what you're passionate about, but you're spending so much time doing things that aren't aligned with what you care about. And so I think being self-aware, taking time to take stock, like Dr. Nelson said, like take stock of like where you're at. If you're feeling overwhelmed, taking a moment to say like, let me recalibrate, let me refresh my GPS for a second. Um, and that becomes a lot easier when you have a little bit more autonomy, so post residency. So understand that it is going to be a little bit more difficult to do that. I think the most difficult time is residency. So med school, you have a little bit more time and autonomy. You may, depending on your school, you may or may not be able to have to go to class and stuff like that. But in residency, and even in clinical years, in clinicals and in residency, your time really isn't your own, and that is what it is. But just kind of keep this in mind for the future when you do have a choice to choose yourself first, because the patients will always be there. You're never going to solve all of their problems. You're never going to fix all academics problems. That's for sure. And so if you let yourself down, you know, there's really no one else who's going to force you to take care of yourself but you. So yeah, that's a reminder to me in this conversation, and hopefully a reminder to all of us, like whatever is important to you, just try to reserve a small amount of yourself for it.
Something I like to tell people, at least when I'm talking to them, and there's like a little bit of doubt that comes out in our conversation, is if I can do it, you can do it, that kind of thing. Some people think I'm downplaying myself, which I mean, probably true. But another part of it is, think of that ideal doctor, that person who you saw and like you saw fireworks behind them. They're like the perfect role model. Everything is going great for them. They're doing this and doing that, and they're just living life. Like they were in your shoes at one point in time. They were a medical student just like you, probably doubting themselves just like you are or might be. They're in residency, wishing that they could, you know, take a break or go get some Taco Bell, something like that. Like they have been where you are. So using that as motivation of, if they were where I was, then I can be where they are. You gotta work. You can't not show up to class and not do anything and expect to be like the top dermatologist at Baylor, for example. But as long as you're like, your goals and your priorities match, you're taking care of yourself, you're confident, not cocky. Just kind of keep that perspective. Like everybody had to start somewhere. Where who I was 10 years ago when I was in medical school, or I don't even know if I was in medical school, whatever. Me 10 years ago is not who I am now, and that's not who I'll be 10 years from now. Not even a year from now or a month from now. I mean, 10 years ago, like now I got two kids, like crazy, wild. You just never know. Just do the best you can every day. Have faith in yourself and keep people around you who have faith in you too. Keep it pretty simple.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Nelson and Dr. Asempa, for really your vulnerability, sharing all of your insight and advice to not only myself, but to all of our viewers. I'm very confident that everyone was able to take away something from tonight that they can implement in their professional or personal lives moving forward. So, with that, I want to thank our panelists once again, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening on our latest installment of Sowing Seeds. So, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and I hope everyone's staying warm during this winter. All right, take care. Thank you.